I'm going to try and talk about innovation as a practitioner, as somebody who has spent the last 8 years trying to work out what low-carbon innovation really means. Having learnt the hard way from many early glitches in our approach, we still continue to learn because the markets in which we're operating are evolving continually. So hopefully what I'll give is an up-to-date view of where we believe the markets now stand, very much reflecting on the experience that we built up over the last 8 years or so. Climate change is almost unquestionably the greatest single environmental challenge that we now face. And that sounds daunting. Much less daunting is the reality that we know how to mitigate it. We know how to build a low-carbon economy. With today's technologies, we could build a truly low-carbon economy. It would be a very expensive solution. And the need and the challenge for innovation, therefore, is to reduce the cost of that transition to a low-carbon economy, because we could do it with what we know we have already. But we would never do it because it would be prohibitively expensive. And therefore, innovation is both the solution to that and also the genesis of a very real business opportunity. And it's one that we believe is probably the greatest single business opportunity that we face over the next 20 years or so. And I suspect it's because of that business opportunity that so many people are here today. And I'm delighted to see so many people here because I have a sneaking suspicion that Northern Ireland can pack a punch well above its weight in terms of its academic resource, in terms of its industrial heritage, in terms of its raw capacity to actually innovate and build businesses, which has been proven many, many times before. I'm going to start here with a view of what governments around the world are actually doing to promote economic recovery through green stimulus. This is really where it all starts right now in the market. Economic downturn, unprecedented in reality. It's been extraordinarily challenging for the last couple of years. And what governments around the world have done is seek to redress the economic slowdown by providing public stimulus funding into a number of areas. But many of those areas have been deemed to be green. And I put green in inverted commas here because it's not all green and it's not equally green. These figures actually come from HSBC, and they mix up things that I would argue are truly green, things that are light green, and things that are plain greenwash. There are some in the world who view infrastructure development as inherently green because if it's new, it's better than it was. It isn't always truly green. So take it with a pinch of salt, but there are a couple of things that are very important here. Firstly, the sums involved are absolutely huge. The reality is also that this is very politically expedient. In building up economic stimulus packages, governments around the world have had to face up to, in many cases, their electorates and say, if we're going to put the country in debt for the next couple of generations, then what is a way in which we can do it that makes sense and that will be acceptable to voters going forward? And building a low-carbon future is far more acceptable than propping up the past. And quite simply, governments around the world, one after another, have fallen into line in saying, look, if we're going to have a stimulus package, let's make it aspirational, let's tie it to a low-carbon future. There is a risk in some of these sums being invested. It's simply the scale of investment which is staggering. So staggering that the capacity of many of the industries that will benefit from this simply won't be able to do the job that we would hope. And therefore, how well targeted some of this money is and how much of it is an investment as opposed to, frankly, a waste of money, we will never know. But overall, I would say that this is great news for the low-carbon economy. What it means is that globally there is an enormous effort to stimulate innovation in this sector and an awful lot of public funding at the moment available to make that happen. It also very helpfully puts the UK in context, because however you look at these numbers, the UK's overall investment in terms of economic stimulus with a green tinge to it is pretty small. And that means we've got to be particularly smart in how we use it. This basically is a chart that simply reflects some work that we did in helping the UK government think about economic recovery, economic stimulus, what might be an approach that would ensure that UK funding is very well targeted. And there are a couple of things here that are important. It's a game of two halves. Building a low-carbon economy really is quite clearly in two stages. The first is all about driving efficiency into everything that we do across the economy, every sector, every aspect, be it home life, transport, be it industry and business. And the great advantage of that first half is that there is a positive business case for it, because it is very much underpinned by energy efficiency, which makes business sense today. Going forward, though, if we simply focus on what we do today, we will stimulate and we will support a number of agendas today, including the jobs agenda. But we won't be taking advantage of the opportunities to build a future that is truly exciting and that has the kind of growth associated with it that will provide jobs for the future. And it's that latter half which is all about innovation and how well we can provide innovative support here in the UK. We know there are some real challenges around investment finance. There are some real challenges in terms of providing targeted support to the right industries. And we also believe that regulations at the end of the day will drive a lot of innovation forward, but the regulations need to be smart regulations, they need to be very well targeted. So that's kind of the context. The UK is collectively pretty well positioned at the moment. And if you talk to investors around the world, they will say, yeah, the UK has some real leadership, and you're starting to make up for some of the concerns around domestic leadership by some of the legislative processes that you put in place. You know, we have a Climate Change Act which has committed us to deep emission reductions over the next 40 years or so to 2050. We have a strong political consensus, and that's very important across all parties. Many parts of the world, this has become a political fighting ground. Here in the UK, frankly, it isn't. And we also have organised some of the internal structures to make investment in this sector more straightforward and easier to recognise from an investor's perspective. We have capabilities, and I mentioned very briefly here in Northern Ireland, the strong academic base that we have, the deep industrial base. We also have great natural resources. For many of the technologies, our strongest advantage globally is going to be the fact that we have a great resource base to develop from here in the UK. And we're actually good at innovation. So at the end of the day, that's kind of key to what we do going forward. And this is the framework that we would use for it.